Hey everyone, welcome. All right.
Looks like we got folks coming in. That's great. All right, good news. All right, while folks are coming in and joining, why don't we start with just a few housekeeping items here. First of all, let us know, where you are. We assume we have a lot of parents of seniors tonight, so maybe put that in there as well. If you're a student class of 26, or maybe we got some 27s, 28s, never know, but let us know where you are, what state you're in, and what year your student is. That gives us a sense of who's on the webinar tonight. Go ahead and drop those in the chat. All right, we got 26 Georgia. All right, I'm in Georgia as well. Got Massachusetts, PA, Tennessee. All right, looks like mostly
New
20
Jersey.
Jersey. There
There
you
we
go.
go.
All right, good
I would
deal.
expect mostly 26s on tonight's call.
Hey,
Everyone,
there's a
oh,
27. I
7.
saw a 27. That's good. Well, siblings, so. All right, good deal. Well, welcome everybody. One more housekeeping item. Tonight, we're going to kind of give you a high level view of the forms and hopefully give you some stress relief, worry about doing the forms, doing them right, doing them accurately. But if you have specific, questions, kind of unique circumstances, special, situations, those kinds of things, you can drop questions in the Q&A, and one of us, whoever's not talking, the other will try to keep up with answering as many questions as we can in the Q&A. But importantly, put them in the Q&A, not the chat, just because it's way easier as for to stay organized and keep up if we're in the Q&A the whole time. If we have to go back and forth, we get a little lost there. So if you have questions, drop them in the Q&A. And like I said, we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. And then also, towards the end of the webinar, we'll give you some information on how you can reach out and talk to us. If you want to talk to us about your circumstances or you want to get some help beyond tonight's webinar, we'd be happy to chat with you and we'll give you some information on how to do that as well. So, all right, why don't we go ahead and jump right in? We should introduce ourselves
Yeah.
first, right? Yeah, we should tell you who we are, right? So my name is Jason. I'm one of the college planning experts here at College Aid Pro. A little bit about my background. I've actually been in higher ed for over 20, going on 25 years now. I've been a college professor, multiple universities since 2002. I was a dean for 7 years at two different universities. So I always joke I'm the former dean who spills the beans for all the parents out there. But most importantly, I'm a parent of three. I got two in college right now myself. I got a senior in college and a sophomore in college, and then a ninth grader in high school. So I've been in your shoes, parents. I feel your pain. That's a little bit about my background. Just love doing college planning, helping parents with this stressful, complicated, costly process. It's definitely not what it used to be when I went to college. It's a lot more than it used to be, that's for sure. So, and then my friend and teammate partner here, Kevin Murphy. Murphy, you want to share about?
Sure. I think everyone can tell we're at that point in the year, right? We're definitely in it right now. It's the middle of financial aid season. But
This
yeah,
is this is only sweet tea, I promise.
I'm Kevin Murphy. I'm one of the college planning experts here at College Aid Pro. Got into doing college financial aid for families through financial services and never looked back. This is all I do now, and been doing it since 2018, and been able to work with somewhere around 1,000 families, and just love what I do. But I think we should. Everyone cares about the forums, so I think we should jump into talking through the FAFSA and CSS profile.
Yeah, we are down to the wire with the forums. So why don't
Yeah,
we go ahead and jump in? All right, can you see my screen okay?
I can.
All right, so assuming you all know here at College Aid Pro, our mission is to end the student debt crisis by empowering families to shop smarter for college. So, and the way you start with ending the student debt crisis, you got to get these forms in and you got to get them right. So, all right, before we jump in, we know you're stressed. We know this is probably overwhelming or feeling overwhelmed, but we got a couple things here to help you kind of calm your blood pressure down. First of all, is a very calming picture of the ocean with a whale's tail. Hopefully, that'll allow you to exhale a little bit. I live on the coast. I live in Savannah, Georgia, and the beach always makes me calm. So we'll just calm a little bit here. But more importantly, when you're doing the forms, you can take breaks. You don't have to whip through it for the whole time. You can save your work and come back later if you need to take a break, And if you make mistakes, it's not the end of the world. You can fix your mistakes. Of course, it's best to get everything right on the first try, and hopefully tonight will help you. But if you do make mistakes, it's not the end of the world, so you can relax. Okay, so take lots of deep breaths. That's kind of our first bit of advice for you. Okay, now next up is parents. Where do we start? Well, if you don't have a MyCap account, make sure you set up a free MyCap account today, and Murph will drop the link in the chat for you. But in MyCap, you're going to put in your student information, put in your parent information, financial information, so forth, put in all your schools. And you can put up to 3 schools in a free account. You can do an unlimited number of schools with a premium account for just $5 a month. But that's going to be super helpful because it'll be able to project out things like student aid index, which we'll talk about tonight. Just super helpful stuff. It'll allow you to look how much scholarships and grants you might get from schools and therefore how much the net price is and all that good stuff. So if you don't have a MyCap account, make sure you set up one tonight. It's going to be super helpful for you. All right, let's jump in. Before we get into the forms, I want to give you a little bit of background information that's related to the forms, which will hopefully help the forms make sense. Okay, let's start with just basics. What is financial aid? So financial aid is basically a discount off the sticker price of college. Okay. And the sticker price, we use that term on purpose because as you see, most of the schools have a advertised cost of attendance, and then they give you financial aid to get the cost down. So it's almost like buying a house or buying a car. That's what they advertise, but it's not what you pay. Okay. And there's different types of financial aid. It's really helpful to know the difference in the different types. The two best are called gift aid because they're gift money. It's free money. You don't have to pay back. One is of gift aid. One is need-based grants, and that's free money you can get based on your students and your family's financial profile. Okay. The second is merit-based scholarships, and that's based on your students' talent profile, their grades, test scores, all that kind of stuff. Okay. And then the other kind of financial aid, but again, those are the best kinds because it's free money that brings the cost of college down. The other kind of financial aid is self-help aid, meaning loans and work study. Okay, work study is exactly what it sounds like. It's a job on campus. Your kid gets a job at the library or whatever. They work 10 hours a week. They get a paycheck. It helps to pay for college, but it doesn't bring the cost down, right? It's not free money. And then, of course, loans. Well, loans help you pay the bill, but not only is it not free money that brings the cost of college down, with the interest, it raises the total cost of college. So you want to absolutely try to get as much in need-based grants and merit-based scholarships as you can to get the cost down so you minimize the amount of loans you have to take. Because again, the interest is going to make the cost of college even more. Okay. So when it comes to need-based grants, how do colleges determine if you're going to qualify for any need-based aid? That's where the financial aid application forms come in. Okay. So with need-based financial aid, the colleges are going to look at your financial aid forms to see if you're eligible. And they basically have a formula. They take their cost of attendance. Again, that's what we call the sticker price. And that's all in tuition, room and board, fees, books, all that kind of stuff. And then they look at this number that's called a student aid index, the SAI in the jargon. It used to be called EFC for you parents who have older kids, or when you went to college, it may have been called the EFC. It's now called the student aid index, same thing. But basically, the student aid index is an estimate of what the colleges think you can afford per year based on what you put on the financial aid forms, your income and your assets, which we'll talk about here in a second. So the difference between your cost of attendance and your SAI is how much need you potentially qualify for. So if a college costs 90 grand, your student aid index comes back at 50 grand based on the FAFSA and the CSS profile, you qualify for 40 grand of need. But that doesn't mean every school is going to meet 100% of your need with grants. That's something that also you have to pay attention to, and MyCap will calculate that for you. But some schools will meet 100% of your need with grants. Others may only meet 50% with grants, and the other 50% meet your need with loans. Okay, so it gets to be kind of complicated, but you got to understand how this works so you can be an informed consumer and know what the true cost of college is going to be. All right. And so you have to file the FAFSA for every school in the country to potentially qualify for need-based aid. And at several hundred other schools, you may have to file an additional form called the CSS profile. And other schools, maybe even institutional applications like Princeton and University of Chicago have their own forms. But you got to file those because they want to see if you qualify for any need-based aid. Okay. Now, we often hear this from families. Well, we make too much money. Why even file the forms? It's not even worth it. It's a waste of our time. We're not going to get anything. Or, oh, it's going to hurt our chances for admissions and so forth. So let us make a plea to you, a pitch tonight for why you should submit the financial aid forms. Okay. Number one is you might be eligible for need-based aid. You just don't realize it. I see this all the time. Talked to a parent the other day and she was like, we're not going to get anything. It's a waste of my time. I said, well, how much you make? She said, we make 100 grand. Like, you're going to probably get a ton of financial aid. She was like, wait, what? Okay, so you need to don't assume you're not going to get any need-based aid. MyCap will help you with this as well. But number two, the second reason is even though merit scholarships are not tied to need, most of the schools that give scholarships still require you to file the financial aid forms to get that merit aid. And so if you don't file the FAFSA, you could be leaving money on the table. So file it. Okay. Number three, it might be your only chance to apply for aid. In other words, there are a lot of colleges where if you don't apply for financial aid in the first year, then you don't get to apply in years 2, 3, or 4 either. They're like, oh, this family can afford full pay. They don't get financial aid. And you can't, I know some parents are like, oh, we just won't apply for financial aid in the first year. That'll give our kid admissions advantage. Then we'll get in, then we'll apply for year 2, 3, and 4. The colleges, a lot of colleges are onto that game and they don't play that. So this may be your only chance. Number four is you have to have submitted financial aid forms to be able to do an appeal. Appeal is a very important part of the process. We'll talk about a little bit tonight. But an appeal is when you get a financial aid offer, you can appeal that offer. Well, if you didn't submit a financial aid application, they can't make you an offer. You won't get an offer, which means you have nothing to appeal. So you have to file the forms to be considered for appeals. And lastly, you got to file the FAFSA for your student to qualify for the federal direct student loan. That's the only loan a student can take out without parents co-signing. Okay, it's a federal direct student loan. It's a student loan program from the federal government. It requires you to file the FAFSA. If you don't file the FAFSA, your kid cannot take that out, which means any loans that you take out would have to be parent loans. All right, and you'd be on the hook for that debt.
I just want to like real quick. I just want to throw
Sure.
two real life examples for how you really might not know if you do or don't qualify for aid, and just don't assume that you don't. Family I work with, the student has almost $4 million in a trust. They're getting federal Pell. They thought they weren't going to get $1 for college, and they were not going to even check the box on the forms, fill out the FAFSA, fill out the CSS profile. Another good example is a family I work with. The parents have somewhere around 5 million in investment properties, got zero financial aid, but because of their income, right, they actually qualify for not a lot, but a small amount of Pell. They too assumed that they weren't going to be eligible for anything, and didn't think it was worth trying. So please just don't make any assumptions, like Jason said, and really, assume that you might be eligible for some aid. But sorry.
Yeah. Well, it's a great. I have a client I'm working with. It's the same thing. A family we're working with, a lot of assets, real estate, but because they're retired, they're on Medicaid. They actually qualify for Pell. So okay, so just don't assume you won't. It's better to have those forms on file and not need them than the other way around. So we always say there's never a reason really to not file. All right. Okay, now before we get into the nuts and bolts of the actual forms, we always give parents what we call the fairy godmother's 3 commandments. So if you follow College Aid Pro, our webinars, our workshops, our podcasts, you may know Peg Kiao. She's our fairy godmother of financial aid. She's the director of education here at CAP. And she has 3 commandments for all the parents. Number one is you got to be honest on these forms. The FAFSA is a federal form, so you want to be honest. But you don't want to overestimate and you don't want to overshare. Okay. So be honest, but don't overestimate and don't overshare. And we'll talk about what that means exactly here in a sec. But when it comes to things like overestimating, if you own a business, yeah, you want to think of your business is worth a lot of money, except at this stage in life when you're applying for financial aid. Okay. And you may have some things that you feel like you want to tell the colleges. You might not want to share that or overshare that because that could hurt you as well. So just follow those 3 commandments. All right. Now, having said all that background stuff, let's jump in. The first form is the FAFSA. Every college in the country requires it. And it goes live October 1st. So it's live, of course. It's been live for over a month now. And the FAFSA is actually a little bit easier than it used to be. It's a lot easier than the CSS profile, in fact, now, because now it's connected to the IRS database and they just pull over your tax returns, which helps a lot. And importantly, they pull over the tax returns from the prior year, which is the base income year. What that means is if your kid's going to college next year in 26, you're filing the FAFSA this year, which is 25, and they're going to pull over your most recent tax returns, which was last year. Okay, so if you got that, so that's how that works. And if you're in a divorce or separated situation, only one parent has to file. We'll explain more about this in a second, but that would be the custodial parent, which for financial aid purposes is defined as the one who provides the most financial support. Okay, and we'll explain that a little bit more here in a sec, but only one parent has to file the FAFSA. And the login procedure is step one is you got to create your FSA ID, your federal student aid ID. Each student's going to need one and a parent's going to need one. Okay, so the first thing you need to do now, if you haven't done it, you need to create your FSA ID, and there's the link to where you do that. And again, your student needs one, and at least one parent. If you're married filing jointly, just one parent. Now, if you got some other special circumstances, it may be more complicated than that, but generally one parent needs it. Okay, and you're going to need this to access and submit the FAFSA. So when you create your account, jot down the username and password and jot down the security questions because you may need those to log in. Okay, you may need those to log in. So make sure you just jot those down somewhere. All right, now let's talk a little bit more about the FAFSA contributors. So technically, your student is the one applying for aid, and you, as the parent, are going to be the contributor to the student's application. This is, of course, assuming your student is a dependent student. If your student's independent, then just the independent student applies. But assuming your student's dependent, then the student applies, and then you, as the parent, are the contributor to their application. Okay. So the contributors, you have to log in with your FSA ID. It's not the student's, it's yours, and then contribute the data that goes into your student's account. Now, it can get kind of complicated because of this prior year thing. So we'll talk through this a little bit. If you're married filing jointly, because the way the tax returns are filed and you're still together, you're not separated or divorced or anything like that, only one parent has to file, and you just mark married filing jointly and it pulls over the tax return for both of you. But let's say you were married in 2024, but have since separated or you have certain different circumstances, then you got a more complicated situation. Okay, if you're married, if you're still together but married filing separate, both parents are contributors, so you're gonna have to do two at the parent level. Okay, but again, if you're separated or divorced, only one has to do it. And then if you happen to be, I think I mentioned this earlier, if you were married in 24 but have since gotten separated or divorced, you may have to enter everything in manually because the tax returns they would pull over would be the married filing jointly, and that's no longer the situation. Okay. And importantly, when they pull over the tax returns, you're going to have to give consent. You can only do that once. Okay. Once it's done in a given year, it can't be revoked. So you want to make sure you get that right. So I know that sounds pretty complicated. If you have any special circumstances like any of these kinds of things, feel free to reach out to us and get some help. You don't want to get this part wrong. Okay. So feel free to reach out. Okay, so once you log in, we always recommend you're going to do the student first, but this is what you're going to see. You're going to log in. You're going to click on Start New Form. Now notice it's the 26-27 form. You're applying for aid for next year. Don't start a 25-26 form, even though this is the year 2025. You're filing it for next year. So you're going to do the 26-27 form. And we always recommend doing the student first. There's complicated reasons why. Just trust us on this one, okay? Do the student one first, and then log out and do the parent one second, okay? That's the order you want to follow. Do the student first. So you're going to click on student, and then you're going to see, you're going to put some information, and you're going to see this. This is where you're going to provide consent to pull over tax returns. Okay, they're going to verify part of the system, all that kind of stuff. So you'll see this screen, and then on the bottom right, you will see the blue rectangle where it says approve. You're going to hit approve, and that's going to then securely pull over information. Okay, and you'll see this screen for just a second, and then it'll say success, and then you move on to the next 6 stages, basically 6 stages for the student section of the FAFSA. The first one's going to be the personal circumstances. They're going to want to know, does your kid have any special circumstances such that they're an independent person? They're in the military, they're homeless, a ward of the court, those kinds of things. So just read those closely. But for most families, it's none of these apply. Okay, and then you're going to give some demographic information, your sex, your race, if prefer not to answer, you can put that as well. Then it's going to ask some financial information about the student. This is the student application, so these are the student financials. So it's not where you put 529 money or anything like that. Just the student financials. Then you're going to put in the colleges. You're going to list all your colleges. And then you're going to invite the contributor, mom or dad. You're going to send an email invitation to mom or dad, and then you're going to sign it, and the student part will be done. Those are the stages. Okay. All right. So let's a couple of parts of this though can get a little tricky. Under the personal circumstances part, and once you've completed that, you're going to go into demographics. You're going to get this question is going to pop up. And the answer is going to be no. It's defaulted to no, but you want to don't change it over to yes, keep it to no. And basically, this is asking, are the students' parents refusing to provide their information on the form? You definitely want to say no to this because it has to be no for the student to be eligible for federal aid. So just don't get tripped up by that. Just leave it at no. Okay, and then next step is going to be the financial aid. The financials, like I said, you're going to enter, does your kid have any money in the bank, that kind of thing. And then you're going to get to the colleges page. And this is where you list all of your colleges. You'll search them by either by the state or state, city, and name, or by the school code. If you happen to know the FAFSA code for the schools on your list, you can do it that way as well. But importantly, you can only put up to 20 colleges on the FAFSA at one time. So if you have more than 20 schools, here's the workaround. You put in 20 schools, all right, and then you're going to submit the FAFSA, you and the contributor, their student and the contributor. And then you're going to wait 2, 3, 4, 5 days, however long it takes, until the FAFSA is processed. And you'll go back into the student's account, look at the dashboard, and it'll say if it's in progress or processed. And once it's processed, what that means is it has sent all of your information to all of those 20 schools. Okay, so again, you're filling out one FAFSA with the student and the contributor contributing to the student. And then you list all your colleges, and the FAFSA sends all the information to all those colleges on your list. If you have more than 20, you put in 20, submit it, let it process. It's going to take 3, 4, 5 days maybe. So go back in a week later or however. You can check every day if you want. But as soon as it says process, then you know those schools have gotten your FAFSA information. Then you can delete any of the schools you want. It doesn't matter because they've all gotten the information now, and just add your new ones. So I have a family I'm working with, kids applying to 29 colleges. So we submitted 20 colleges. We waited 3, 4 days, went back in. It said processed. We deleted 9 of the 20, didn't matter which ones, put in 9 more and hit submit. Those processed and got sent to the other additional 9. So that's how you do that. Once you put in all your colleges, you're going to invite your parent as a contributor. So you're going to see this contributor invite. Put in mom or dad's email, invite the contributor, hit send. It's going to say, are you sure? Did you get the email right? So you want to double check, make sure it's the correct email and say, yep, that's right. Send the invitation. And here's a little trick. Here is an important little hack. Okay. You can click on this little caret where it says other ways to send the invite. Copy that invite link and save it. Copy it down, write it down, save it. Because that's going to be a little cheat code for you as the parent to get in to do your contributor part. So write down that invite link, save it. Okay. Then you review it if you want. Make sure you got everything right. And hit sign your FAFSA and submit. Okay. Now it's not done yet. Now you got to get the contributor to put their information into the student's account. Okay. So you're going to log back out. Parent, you're going to log in, use that code to accept the invitation that you wrote down. That'll log you right in. You put in all your information. You follow the exact same process, the demographics, the financials, etc., and you get to the end. And once the parent then submits their part, you are done. You'll get this beautiful little congratulations at the top. The FAFSA form is complete. Okay. And just a reminder, if you happen to make a mistake, you can correct those. So if you think you may have made a mistake or something's off, you might want to think about talking to us to get some help, or we could go in and look with you and make any changes or any corrections that need to be made if you made any mistakes. All right, Murph, anything you want to add to any of that process?
No.
All right. Yeah, the FAFSA what's our joke? If you're going to do the FAFSA, you might want to get a glass of wine or or something like that. But if you're going to do the CSS profile, you might want to have an entire bottle ready to go. So speaking of that, now let's talk
Uh,
about the CSS profile, and I'll let you handle this one. You're really good at presenting on the CSS profile. I'll take over the Q&A for you.
awesome. We got
Sure.
20 questions so far, and they've all been, really good questions. So thanks everyone. But yeah, so the CSS profile, and I'm gonna answer this one live that we just got. But so after the schools receive the FAFSA, do they reach out to you if they want the CSS profile? No, you have to know what financial aid forms the schools your student is applying to, what forms they use and what forms they require. So we're going over the CSS profile now, and you have to know, do the schools on my students list need this form? And you have to be proactive. With this entire process, it's on you. That includes uploading tax returns or anything else. So I just wanted to say that for everyone to hear. But onto the CSS profile. Fun fact: CSS stands for College Scholarship Service Profile, and it is administered through College Board. But yeah, do you want to go on to the next slide?
Yep. Sorry.
So no, don't worry at all. But so to complete the CSS profile, it's pretty straightforward. cssprofile.collegeboard.org, right? You're going to go in to your student's College Board account. They should have one. I've over the years have always come across a few students who don't, right? Maybe they've never taken an SAT or a PSAT, or maybe they're not taking any AP exams. That's okay. They're going to need to create an account. Now, I know we have a 2027 family on the call tonight, so it should go live October 1st of senior year for every student. But for all the 2026 families on tonight's call, this has been live. This has been live for like 6 weeks now. Now, somewhere around 250 schools actually use the CSS profile, and it is in addition to the FAFSA. And again, that's something you have to be proactive on. A big differentiator between the FAFSA and the CSS profile is that the CSS profile, a lot of the schools treat home equity the same as they treat your checking account, literally. So that could be a really big factor in terms of how much aid you get. And the schools that are using the CSS profile, they use the form because they give a lot of their own institutional grants, meaning their own money. So usually the schools that use it, a lot of money is on the line, and home equity could definitely play a role. Also, for any families on tonight's call that are, and I know we have a few that are divorced or separated, there could be something called the non-custodial profile, right? And that is an additional CSS profile for the non-custodial household. And that's something that you also want to think from a planning opportunity in terms of who's the parent who provides the most support, but also how can we justify that, and how can we position ourselves to get more money? For business owners, the CSS is a little bit more complex because of the questions they ask about businesses, right? So they're going to ask things like, what's the value? What's the debt? What are your gross receipts? What are your expenses? And they don't always account for every expense if you look at the line items they ask for. So there's a lot that goes into it. And the good thing about for business owners this year is that your info is excluded from the FAFSA if you're owning a small business with fewer than 100 full-time employees, but it's never going to be excluded from the CSS profile. So you do want to be mindful about that. Also, they're likely going to ask for a copy of your business tax returns. There is a waiver for anyone who is divorced or separated for the non-custodial household for that other parent. Some serious situations though, like can't contact via court order, right? No contact at all, no financial support, things like that. And just as Jason said earlier, you're going to need quite a heavy drink because it's a lot more. It's more invasive. It's more questions. They're trying to ask you all of these questions to give you less money, right? I mean, just based on how you filled out all the information that goes on there, there's a lot of opportunities where you could end up costing yourself quite a pretty penny. So, but all right, do you want to go to the next slide? All right, so one of the first parts of the CSS profile, this is after you add, like student name and basic details, email, phone, is you get to the school search. And the school search, you can just search based on a college's name, but it gets a little bit tricky because some schools, there's multiple like grad school, or you see here Cornell College of Vet Medicine, School of Law, but then there's the actual school, Cornell University, that your student's likely applying to. So you just want to make sure you're adding the right schools to the list. I see this happen all the time with Columbia. I believe it's College and Engineering or College of Engineering and then School of General Studies, and it just confuses everyone. So you do want to be a little bit thorough with that. And then they ask details like, all right, so how is your student applying? First year undergrad, never previously attended, for everyone on tonight's call with a senior. And then are they living on campus or off campus? And are they applying to college regular, early action, or early decision? I see a lot of families get very concerned about messing up how the student's applying to college, right? Regular decision, early action, early decision, doesn't matter. All that does is generate essentially a deadline at the end of the form. So please do not lose sleep or get stressed if you mess that question up. But yeah, do you want to go to the next slide? All right. So for your income, the largest driving factor is always going to be your adjusted gross income. And when you're pulling a line item, it's very specific here, line 11 of your 2024 tax return. And now you see that's a required question. It literally says the word required. But the next question, it's optional, right? It's a toggle between no and yes. As soon as you check one or select one, you can't uncheck anything. But there's no word required here. It's not something you have to fill out. And you'll notice that's the entire theme of what we're going to talk about for the CSS profile. There's a lot of optional questions that you don't necessarily have to put anything there. And another great example of that is right here, right? So when you get to the tax, the more detailed tax questions, they need to know wages and other earned income, line 1Z, but tax exempt interest, that's optional. Taxable interest, that's optional. Ordinary dividends, that's optional. And I don't see a way of reporting this helping you, right? And not only that, but the colleges that are using the CSS profile for the most part are going to gather your tax returns. Let them do the work. Let them figure out the numbers. And then another question too is how much did this particular parent earn from work in 2024? I see a lot of families make a mistake here and just take the number off of W-2. But if you own a business and you have a Schedule C or you get a K-1, or even if you have a 1099 and you're paid as a contractor, those are things that all get added in here to account for your total income, how much you earned from work. So just keep that in mind. Now, a little bit tricky with the FAFSA, they're actually pulling line 24 of your tax return, but on the CSS profile, they're pulling line 22. There is an allowance for self-employment tax, but this is another required question. This is something that you obviously have to fill out and you definitely want to get right. Too little in taxes will end up costing you more. Too much in taxes will end up being obviously the wrong number, but again, just be accurate, get it right. Now, so there are ways to get a fee waiver on the CSS profile. And a simple one is if your income is less than 100,000, right? If your AGI is even $99,999 or less, you will not have to pay. Now, if this doesn't apply to you, right? And your income is over that and you don't qualify for any of these federal benefits that are on the screen, like SNAP, WIC, TANF, you will have to pay. So there are going to be obviously families who are going to qualify for this. And it's something that you definitely want to make sure you check. And also for the federal benefits too, if you do take advantage of them, right, and you do qualify for those, please make sure you mark that on the CSS profile. Now, I think this is another tricky question. I'd say the biggest mistake I see families make with tax deferred pension and retirement savings, putting the whole value here. Can't tell you how many CSS profiles and appeals I've had to do and profiles I've had to correct where someone put like $1 million here. And it's not. What they're specifically asking you is from box 12 of your W-2. And they want to know how much did you put in pre-tax, not into a Roth, but pre-tax into a retirement plan in a given year, in 2024 in this instance. And the same thing for the HSA. They're not asking for the number from your Schedule 1. They're specifically asking for the amount that you put in and your employer put in, and that would be found on your W-2 as well. So just make sure you're doing this accurately. If you hit the drop downs, there's a detailed explanation of what lines to look at. And then, sorry, And then also you'll see here alimony. That's another required question. It's not just what's on the tax return. They're also asking what's not on the tax returns. And then same thing for housing and other living allowances. So think about someone who's a member of a clergy, right? They may get their housing paid for. That is a required question. Now, another required question too is untaxed income. And untaxed income, I've seen families make a mistake here, like they're getting family support and they're putting that here. But this is specifically like workers' comp, untaxed disability benefits and things like that. If you are taking a loan from a family member, it's a loan. You don't have to put that here. So again, it's untaxed income. If you don't know what to put in any of the fields, just hit the drop down and don't answer. Thoroughly read the explanation before answering. Now, this is another one too that could end up costing you money. So they're asking you to project out your 2025 current year income. If your income went up a lot, it's not going to help for the sake of financial aid. I think a good way to look at this is don't assume you're going to earn a ton more, right? Be honest, maybe be a little bit conservative, and just don't overestimate anything. If you don't know, put the same number from 2024. And they're asking income from work, other taxable income, that would be think like interest and dividend income or capital gains, things like that. And then untaxed income and benefits would be your pre-tax retirement contributions and other like disability benefits and things like that. And then they ask the question, do you expect to change, right? Save this for the appeal. But if you do answer yes to that, they're going to ask you some additional questions about 2026 information, right? So enter the amount you're going to earn or expect to earn in 2026 and other taxable income in 26 and untaxed income in 2026 as well. So and this whole form, it's meant to get as much information as they can, because ultimately the goal is to keep the amount of money they give you low. Now, when you're filling the form out and you're divorced or separated, we really encourage families to follow the new FAFSA definition. That is the parent who provided the most financial support. And that's on you to figure out, right? There's no set formula or anything like that. But obviously, in the 12 months leading up to the day of filing the form, I think you should have a good idea of who has provided the most financial support. And there's usually a good opportunity to just think through it a little bit further and not just quickly decide, right? You do want to think through those details some more. But they're going to ask you a question like, who provided more than half of the student, that's Peg here, the student's financial support. And then we're putting MJ. MJ's our sample mom here. And then after this question, do you want to hit the next page? Oh, we don't show it. But after that question, they ask whose information you're putting on that application. So definitely want to make sure that you're just reading the questions, being thorough. And they do ask year of separation or year of divorce. One thing that's been happening this year is if you were separated in 2024, can't put that, right? The most recent year you can put is 2023. So you'll see that if you did have a recent separation, but you do need to answer these questions as well. And then when you're answering information for the non-custodial parent, you do have to put that other parent's occupation, the employer, how much you expect them to contribute to college in the 26-27 school year, if there's a legal agreement, or sorry, a written agreement specifying that contribution. You have to enter all those details in. Now, let's say you honestly don't know, right? Like you don't know what they do for a living or where they work. Maybe there's no contact. It's okay to put the word unknown. That they accept that. That's allowed to be entered here. So now for parent assets, it follows the FAFSA rules, right? So that'd be as of the day of filing. And you do want to try to do the FAFSA and CSS profile. I don't want to say exactly the same day, but you want to try to do them close together so all the numbers line up. But you don't want to have wildly different numbers on the FAFSA than on the CSS profile. But they're asking for cash, savings, checking, and deposit accounts. And just, that's pretty straightforward, that question. But then they ask for investments, and investments can be where it gets a little bit tricky. One of the big things is 529s are parent investments. So always remember that. On the CSS profile, they do ask for all 529s. So if you have 3 children and you have 3 different 529s, they ask you for the total of all of them. That's different than what they ask on the FAFSA. And then in addition to that, any other investments that you have. If you have investment real estate, you don't put it under investments. There's this other question you see here, own real estate beyond the primary home. Then when you answer yes to that question, it populates more questions. And same thing if you answer yes to own or operate a business, then that populates more questions. And same thing for own a farm. They would ask you questions about your farm. And yes, checking savings cash as of the date of filing the forms. Now, they're asking here, and what we're screen sharing is for investment properties, but they ask you the same questions that they're going to ask you for your primary residence, right? What's the current market value? Don't overestimate. You definitely want to be strategically low with that. How much do you owe on it, right? So think about any mortgage or any debts against the house. And then how many of these properties, not of the same one, but how many properties do you own? How many months of the year is the property rented? And if for some reason you don't know the exact answer, you can get that from your tax return. It should be on your Schedule E. What was the year of purchase? What was the purchase price? They use those 2 answers to figure out, I guess, their idea of what the home is worth. That's a good way to explain those 2 questions. Now, for student assets, they're going to ask about student investments, and then they're going to ask about a trust. We'll come back to trust in a second. And as soon as you check yes or no to any required question, right, you're going to have more questions usually populate. And now Peg is our student here. How much does Peg currently have in cash, savings, checking? Same thing as the parent question, and that's going to be as of the day of filing. And then what's the current market value of Peg's investments? Another required field. And then current value of all trusts Peg is a beneficiary of, right? So that's another one too. And then you can see here, if you were to say yes to a trust, well, they ask more. Is any of the income or part of the principal of the trust currently available? Who established this? They're going to say parents or other. And what type of trust is this? Irrevocable, revocable? All of that plays a role in terms of how it's treated. Now, this is a question parents literally lose sleep over, and it's how much, in this case, Peg, the student, does she expect to receive from the following sources to pay for, think about it, basically to pay for college in the upcoming school year. And if you put a really high number, you're going to get less financial aid. If you put a really low number, it can't necessarily hurt you, right? It's not going to cause them to give you more money, right? It's not going to cause them to give you less money, but don't lose sleep over this. There's different ways to come up with this number. Maybe you already have an idea. I do want to point out they're not asking you how much you plan to borrow, right? They're asking you how much you plan to pay essentially out of pocket or with assets. So please do not lose sleep over this question, and do not overestimate your resources. Now, another question too is about scholarships, and maybe your student is already guaranteed going to get another scholarship, right? But a lot of scholarships, I mean, Jason, unless you can think of any differently, I mean, all the ones I know, the students typically find out much later in the year, much later than when you're filing the CSS profile. So it's very rare to put something here, but there are instances where I've seen that. And same thing with tuition benefits, right? So for tuition benefits, that's something that you already may know that your employer is going to provide to your student. Great, but maybe you don't know for sure. Maybe you don't know all the details. You do want to be certain. The last thing here is relatives other than parents and any other sources providing funds to help pay for college expenses. That's another one too. I just want to be clear. Anything you put in here will essentially count against you. It's a resource that's meeting your family's need. So again, we're very big on everyone being very honest, but you want to be certain. The example I like to use, and it's real life right now for a family I'm working with a Barnard appeal, is that sometimes people change their mind. So like, for example, let's say in this instance, someone's going to promise to pay for all of college. but there's nothing set in stone and they change their mind at the last minute, could definitely impact things. So you want to be very, very certain about the numbers that you're entering here. And lastly, we're getting towards the end of the form. We're not totally there yet, but lastly is special circumstances. And save it. This is the perfect example, but last year actually, I literally copy and pasted a special circumstance section for a family to appeal to UPenn. They got an extra $8,500. And it's simply because a lot of colleges overlook the special circumstances section, and there's no way to know for sure that they're counting this or that they're even making any changes or doing what they should do. So save it. Save it for the appeals process. And we are here to help with that as well when the time comes. Okay. Now, when it comes to supplemental questions, these are all additional questions from individual colleges. And you can see here, they're not necessarily required. They are requested. And maybe you want to wait. For example, the question about how much consumer debt do your parents owe? That's from Harvard. Maybe you want to wait to address that later. But these could be anything. You know, they could ask you the type of car you drive, if you have any credit card debt. It could go on and on. So lots of in-depth questions. Again, usually, like, this isn't to help. Why would they need to know the make, model, year, and debt on your primary vehicle, right? So it's not necessarily to help, but if there are some things that could help you, maybe you want to save it to share on appeal. Now, the final step, if you have a fee waiver, it's going to simply say there's a credit equal to the charges. But if you don't have a fee waiver, you are going to need to pay. You are going to have to input a credit card, and they are going to charge you a $9 one-time registration fee. And then they're going to charge you $16 per school. If you have to go back and add more colleges, they don't charge you $9 again, right? They only charge that once. And then the 16 per school is literally just based on however many schools you send this to and add to the form. And now you can correct a CSS profile, but it's a lot harder than correcting the FAFSA because it's a little text box at the bottom that the colleges have to catch. But you can correct it. You can save a copy, and every family should. And then you can always go back. You see here, add a college or a program. You can always go back and add a college. And how I mentioned earlier that early action, early decision, it generates a deadline. You see that here, priority filing date, you know, for Amherst is January 10th. So that's what that's primarily used for. And in addition to that, you're likely, depending on what CSS schools and how many, you're likely going to have to upload additional documentation through what's called IDOC, IDOC. It's essentially a document portal that you have to upload information to, usually tax returns, 1099s, and other documents like that. But yeah, so this is the CSS profile. Do you want to go to the next page? Yep. So that was the profile. We've gone over the FAFSA, and we understand that it's a lot. And I'm taking a deep breath too. You know, at this time of year, I think everyone has to just take a deep breath, maybe laugh a little. We get it; it's stressful. Thankfully, you usually only have to go through this once per child. Obviously, you have to reapply for financial aid every year, but that first year, that initial application process is always the most work. But we get that this is a lot of work. We get that this is stressful. We get that families have complex situations. And there are ways to have us help you. I do want to spend a few minutes. Do you want to go to the next slide? So if you're interested in having us help you with this process, even if you started your FAFSA and you're like, I think I messed it up, or if you're you have a situation that's changed from 24 to 25 in terms of income, or maybe you're divorced or separated and you need someone to help figure out who's the custodial parent and how to navigate all of this, how to do a waiver and how to file all of that. We just started having a few spots open up for our packages, and we'll talk about those in a second. But if you're not sure which one is best for your family, we always want to make sure that if you're going to have us help you, you're seeing a big ROI. You're going in the right direction in terms of it's something that's going to provide you a return, save you time, money, stress, something. Let us be the ones to figure that out for you. We're not counting on you to know offhand what's the best option for your family. Let us help figure that out for you. And then it's always your decision in terms of how you want to proceed, how you want us to support your family. But I want to just screen share real quick.
Can you stop sharing?
Yeah, it's cool. I think I was able to do it. But so a couple of things. We obviously have our full service financial aid packages, which I'll dive into in a second. If you were to enroll tonight, we do only have a few spots left. It's been a tough year. It's definitely been a busy season. But you can get $500 off with code FALL500. Now, this is the form that should populate when you scan that QR code, but you're just going to put your name, your email, and a phone number. We do need to know the time zone too. We don't want to call anyone too late. And we'll just give you a call. We'll figure out what's going on. You know, can we even help you, right? What's the best path forward, and go from there. Let me just show real quick. That's the checkout page. Okay. And now on the checkout page, by the way, just please make sure to enter the promo code. You can see here that discount gets applied. It's active. It's working. But so just want to highlight this real quick. We're really proud of our results for the class of 2025. You can see these numbers are pretty staggering, right? On average, the savings was over 123,000. I personally wanted to show everyone the lowest savings because I just felt like 123,000, it's a lot to grasp. It sounds like a really big number. So in all fairness, the lowest amount we saved a family was $5,892. And even then, it's still an ROI. They've still got a return on their investment. Not only that, we don't have anything here for stress, but I'd say this, the amount of stress we've saved families is huge. 121 hours saved. You can see all of our photos here. And then this is kind of what's included. And we're really going to help you with this entire process, forms, appeals, how you're going to pay for it. And I'd say a lot of families at this point, admissions, your student's probably already set, but we do have help with that as well. So just wanted to show everyone those options that are available. And again, if this is something you're interested in, or you're just interested in learning how we can help you and what the best path forward is, put your information in the form, which Jason, by the way, could you, actually, I'll do it real quick. I just want to drop it in the chat. So everyone grab that form, please. That is the one that, well, if you do want us to give you a call, please grab that form. And then in addition to that, here is the page that I'm currently screen sharing. So you'll be able to see that. And then also tomorrow, the recording will be on the landing page as well. So just wanted to go over those things. Anything you want to add, Jason?
No, I just reiterate what you said, which is that, this is one of the biggest investments your family probably will ever make next to buying a house or retiring. You're hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line. It's a complicated, confusing process. So if you're not sure or worried you might have made a mistake or missed out on an opportunity or something, it might be well worth just talking to us because it can be well worth the investment of getting expert guidance on this because the stakes are so high and it's confusing. It's complicated stuff. So we'd be happy to help you with it. So, if you've already filed your forms, we can even take a look at those and make sure you didn't, I think you said this, but just reiterating, take a look at what you filed and see if you made any mistakes or any ways we could do corrections before there's too much damage done. And then going forward, we can help you out with appeals. Very important part of the process, getting more money there. Private scholarship strategy. On private scholarships, the good news is there's thousands of them. Bad news is there's thousands of them. And so it really helps to get some strategy around how to avoid wasting time and finding the good ones and that kind of stuff. And then also, I come from a financial services background as well, besides being a professor, and just figuring out how to pay the 4-year bill can be overwhelming for parents. Like, how am I going to do this? It's $200,000 and I got 2 more kids coming along and I'm trying to retire in a few years. Like, how do we do this? So just having a second set of eyes take a look at it, say, okay, here's how you do it. You're going to do this year 1, you're going to do this year 2, you're going to do this year 3, year 4, and so forth. That's super helpful. And the other thing, I don't know if you mentioned it, I was busy answering questions, but If you're a parent of a senior, your base income year for year two is this year. So even if you don't necessarily get as much financial aid as you hoped for the first year in college, you might be able to get some in years two, three, and four. And we can take a look at that for you as well. See if there's opportunities to get more aid down the road. And so that's something to think about as well. So, all the parents I work with, they're like, this was well worth the investment. This is so stressful. And parents aren't sleeping at night over this kind of stuff. And it's like there is help available. You don't have to try to do this all on your own. So we'll cover the fee, that's for sure, and finding ways to save money that you'll get your money back for sure. But if you want some help, reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk to you. And again, even if you've already filed your forms, you might still want to talk to us to make sure you're making mistakes and lose out on any financial aid possibilities.
Yeah, really, really good points. And yeah, financial aid is for 4 years. You do want to think about the 4 years. If you have more than one child, right? Things are going to change when you have more than one kid in college at the same time. How much you qualify for at certain schools, namely CSS profile schools, will change. And you could end up qualifying for a lot more. So there's different things that you want to do. And as Jason was saying, from a correction standpoint, one of the big things, if you need to correct anything, is to correct it before the college gives you an offer. Right. So once they start reviewing your information, you're stuck. You have to go to the appeals process. And that can be timely and stressful. And, there's a lot involved there. But you definitely want to try to catch any mistakes if you've already filed your forms. But truthfully, you want to also avoid making any mistakes. It's a huge, huge, huge expense. And you want to try to save money wherever you can. Even we have this graphic that we usually share towards the summer. Summer after senior year, when you're getting ready to pay the bill, of how much 1 or 2% interest can actually save you over the life of a loan.
Oh yeah.
Tens of thousands of dollars. And everyone thinks student loans are simple. They're not. There are some loans that we share with our clients that no one knows about, right?
Yeah.
And they're super low interest during college, that it isn't as simple as it might seem. And Google is not a good resource for student loans. I will say that.
Well, and the other thing I would add to it is the big, beautiful bill that just passed changed everything. If your student is planning to go to medical school or grad school or business school, law school, and so forth, that's a game changer because it used to be, I'll take medical school an example, that once a student gets a bachelor's degree and goes to med school, they used to be able to take out the total cost of medical school and loans in their name. So mom and dad are not on the hook anymore. But now they've capped it at 200,000 total.
Yeah,
So if your kid's going to med school and it's going to cost $350,000 or whatever, now you got a gap of 100 to $150,000. You got to figure out how to come up. You got to figure out a way to come up with that money. And so that leads back into how do we pay for undergrad and still have some money maybe left over in the 529 or whatever to shift over to med school. So if your kid's planning on going on beyond bachelor's degree, you really might want to talk to us because now you're looking at $500,000 and or more and it's now more complicated than ever because of the recent changes of the big beautiful bill.
really good point. And another thing too is if your plan is to take loans, and let's say that you don't necessarily qualify, which is good to figure this out now, but don't necessarily qualify for a good interest rate on a private loan, you're going to be capped for Parent Plus loans, and it's going to be $20,000 a year or $65,000. That 65 is the lifetime cap for a student. So again, all these conversations are things that you can have now before it's too late. We every year have a lot of families come to us in the spring to fix things. The spring is a little bit late to fix things. Anything that can be fixed, usually you want to start working on it now, start planning now. I just want to point something out. Someone just asked a question about the $123,000. Yes, that is in savings for the 4 years, which does I think does make it a little bit easier to understand. But sorry, let me get back to it. This is for the 4 years in savings. So I think that that's important to keep in mind. But let us be the ones to figure out if we can save you 120 grand. Let us be the ones to figure out if you can navigate this on your own. We're really, really good at doing that.
Yeah, and just to sort of clarify a little bit, like the savings comes in two ways. One is getting more financial aid on the front end during the financial aid application process to get the cost down. Then also savings on the back end and how you pay, because how you pay is just as important as how much, right?
Yep.
That means getting maybe more aid in years two, three, and four, or getting private scholarships down the road, or using creative financing. If you can get a loan at a low interest rate, that could free up, 529 savings to grow or whatever. There's all kinds of potential there. But if you can get, loans at lower interest rates, that can save you tens of thousands of dollars on the back end. The
Yeah.
Parent Plus loan right now, I don't know if I can't remember if you mentioned this or not, Murph, but students can only take $27,000 total in federal direct student loan. Anything above that's going to be in the parent's name. You're going to be a cosigner or a parent loan. And right now, the Parent Plus loan at the federal government's 9% interest plus like roughly 4% closing costs. And so that's an enormous amount of additional cost to total cost of college and interest payments. So, we can find you loans at much lower rates than that and save you tens of thousands of dollars on the back end. So that 123 is off the total cost of college, including savings on loan interest on the back end.
Yeah, let us be, and really good points. And it, the APR on the Parent Plus loan, when you factor in the fee, I think it's almost 11%.
It's crazy.
It's crazy, but let us be the ones to figure out if we can help you.
Yeah.
Again, we're very, very good at that, but I will stop sharing. I know we're at time. We really appreciate everyone. If you've been following us for a while, for following us, for listening in tonight. We are trying to obviously put you guys in the best spot to make college affordable and to save money and to not be in a bad position for retirement. So we do appreciate you following along. We do appreciate you watching tonight's presentation and hanging out with Jason and I.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do. So just take advantage of all the strategies that are out there to get the cost of college. There's a lot you can do. And so if you're worried about it, reach out and talk to us.
But thanks everyone. We hope you have a good night.
Yeah, hopefully this was helpful.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.